Morning Joe and the Pro. No Prez. Do you realize it's another holiday in Canada and that's his excuse for not being here today, Teddy?
It's a holiday in Canada. There's always holidays in Canada.
I think every day's a holiday for the Prez. I really do. I mean, when I grow
Although,
up,
look,
I want to be like the Prez.
we're here in Nevada. We have Nevada Day. What's that? November 1st or whatever it is, some random day.
It's always around Halloween.
Boston.
Yeah.
There's random holidays out there. We'll let Prez have his. And plus, this way I don't have to see him today. I get to hang out with you, Marco. I appreciate that.
Oh, well, that's nice. What a nice guy starting today. You're in a good mood for a Monday morning, buddy. Good weekend?
I've been running good for the last couple of. 2019 has been a pretty good year so far. Start to finish, or it's not finished yet, but so far for the season, it's been really good. I've been on a good run the last couple of weeks. I've been in a good run the last 5 days. The NBA's been good. So yeah, I'm in pretty good mood on a Monday. But I lost yesterday, so I'm not in that good a mood. And I'll always find it doesn't matter how good a mood I'm in. I'll always find something to piss me off, Marco. It'll get there.
I know. All right. Well, I had a pretty good weekend, except for the Preakness. The Preakness was a shitstorm for me. Full disclosure, but that's what it's about. Fortunately, we went 3-0 over the weekend with the sports plays that eased the pain of that. So we'll keep that run going today. I got to tell you, Teddy, looking at this basketball game tonight, I've been running good in the NBA, but I'm having a hard time deciding if I'm going to use a play here. And right now, it's really looking like I'm not. And for me, it's simply because I don't like these 3-0 games. There was the urban legend that, the team's not going to get swept. They don't want to be embarrassed. Well, that's an urban myth because, teams down 0-3 since 2008 have gotten swept more than they haven't. They're 18-29 straight up since 2008 in the playoffs. That stat courtesy of the stat man, Ralph Michaels, our guy with the access to the database. And it's a pretty big, angle, and it's understandable, especially against a team like Golden State. The series is over. They had not one, not two, Teddy, but 3 legitimate chances to beat the Warriors in this series, and they just didn't do it. How do they pick themselves up off the mat in this one?
That's a good question. But first, we got to go back to the Preakness for just a minute. I know it wasn't a great day for you on Saturday, but for me, I've been in Vegas full time since '98. You feel like you've seen everything. You feel pretty jaded. And then you see a horse with no jockey running around. He's in contention. Have you seen that? I mean, does that happen?
That happens all the time. When a horse throws the rider, obviously he just picked up about 115-pound weight, advantage. No jockey on his back, and they are. I've actually seen it. It didn't happen Saturday, Teddy, but actually seen the horseless or the riderless horse win the race. Obviously, he's disqualified. He can't win. But they'll just go right to the front. In this case, this one just followed the pack. And fortunately, there wasn't, any problems because sometimes when a horse loses a jockey like that, they get turned around. And the worst thing you can ever have, it's not safe having a loose horse going the right way, but having a loose horse go the wrong way on the racetrack can be a catastrophic disaster. And so fortunately that worked out. But yeah, it wasn't good for John Velasquez. Quick trip for him out of the gate and on his ass.
Hall of Fame jockey.
Yes, yeah, he bounces good. He got right back up after it. I would have still been laying there right now. They would have needed a crane to get me up. But Teddy, and speaking of the Preakness, I'm a horse guy. What I'm really hoping for and what's happened in the past when there's been no Triple Crown on the line for the Belmont, the Belmont's been just another horse race. Nobody really, cares about it. This year, if we could get maximum security at the Belmont and War of Will, that would bring viewers in to watch that race, because the owners of Maximum Security obviously have been running their mouths for 2 weeks about getting robbed in the Derby. Well, you know what? I sent a tweet out on Saturday right after the Preakness. Hey, Gary West, put your money where your mouth is. Show up at the Belmont and go against War of Will. Would be great for horse racing. Get some attention there. But enough about that. Let's get to this basketball game. Does Golden State just sweep here, and have that extra rest? They can get Kevin Durant, full rest to come into the into the NBA Finals. Of course, some might say they're playing better without Kevin Durant than they were with Kevin Durant, and that's kind of hard to imagine. But they're playing with a newfound enthusiasm, especially Draymond Green.
Well, I mean, the bench has showed up. This is the bench for the Warriors that didn't get a whole lot of playing time in the series against the Rockets, and the playing time they got wasn't very good. But, you see McKinney with a plus 24 the night, Bell with a plus 10, Looney with a plus 12, Livingston with a plus 4. They're winning the battles with the reserves on the floor. And we say, all right, you talked about the long-term track record. Long-term track record favors teams like Golden State, where the team down 0-3 is, less than 40% ATS over the course of the last decade plus. Let me say, well, what about this Blazers team is different than other teams in this role? I mean, do you see a lot that's different about Portland than the other teams in this role, Marco?
Well, I've seen that this team for a half or 3 quarters has demonstrated that they can play with this Golden State team. But I also got to say, Teddy, maybe this Portland team's more talented than some of the previous teams that were down 0-3. But on the same token, you got to say those other teams that were up 3-0, how many of them were as talented as this Warriors team? You could, half empty, half full. Which way's the glass? We can look at it both ways.
I mean, the Warriors were in the same spot last year twice. They were round 1 against San Antonio, and they came out in the 4th game and laid an egg. The Spurs smacked them with Golden State as road chalk in that game. And the same story in the finals against the Cavs, and the Cavs didn't bring much to the table for Game 4. So that's a split for Golden State in this role last year. In my mind, tonight's much more about the Blazers than it is about the Warriors. Does Portland have the character to show? We've seen teams in these negative spots. Doesn't matter what kind of character they have. They don't show. But we also have to consider Iguodala for Golden State. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to go tonight. That's an impact injury. And we talk about Damian Lillard, who has not had a great series. Iguodala's been on him a fair bit of time. Lillard, 5-18 in his last game. What was he the game before that? It was equally ugly. They need Lillard. And they were minus 23 with him on the floor the other night. Can Lillard have a better game than one we saw? Yeah, he could. He absolutely could. And when we look at this Blazers team, and the point I was trying to make, when we look at Portland in general, you're not going to look at this Blazers squad and say, yeah, they really stand out from the pack as a team that's down 0-3. All that being said, and Portland got swept out of the playoffs last year. Where they didn't show up for Game 4. So those aren't great cases to be made for the Blazers based on recent history, based on current form, based on the track records of these two squads. If you're making the case for Portland, I think it's twofold. One, look at the line. This was a Blazer team that was laying in Game 3 and now is 3-3 from a pure line value standpoint. There's clearly line value on the team that's down 0-3 in the series. Does that matter? It doesn't usually matter in Game 4. You'll see once in a while a team lose a Game 4 by a bucket or two, and they hung within the number. That's the exception rather than the rule. The bigger issue in my mind for Portland is, what is this team going to bring to the table in terms of, hey, we don't want to get swept? There are squads that don't have that mentality, and there are squads that do. And the Blazers, again, been swept out of the playoffs the last 2 years. Is this year's squad's different? We'll find out tonight, Marco.
We shall. I'll give you a stat that does definitely favor Portland tonight if you look just from an angle. But again, this is a different territory because of the 0-3. But revenging a loss of 10 points or more this season, Portland has come back 11-2 in that situation to get the money. So that would favor Portland. My concern in this one, and this might be where I do something in this game tonight, Teddy, I think I'm going to pass the game as far as playing the game pre-game. You know, I hate using that word. Let's use something else. Full game. Because we don't know what they're going to bring. But I'll tell you what, if we're watching this game, I think we're going to get an idea of Portland right away with the way they open the game, if this team's here to play. But on the flip side to that, too, I think if they do give that big effort and maybe, you know, that first half they're in the game and then you start to see that run in the second half by Golden State, if I'm Portland, don't you think after what happened in the first 3 games and they fall behind in the second half that it's, here we go again, and then that's where you have the opportunity to maybe jump in live betting and say this team's they're gonna fold up like a cheap suit. Once they give, after they give their best punch and Golden State's still standing there, I could see this team in the second half just mailing it in if they fall behind by 6-7 points.
I don't know if they fall behind. If they're down by 16, I don't think the Blazers are going to come back. If they're down by 6, I don't think that's any issue for Portland tonight. But I'm involved in this game. I'm involved in this game before tip-off, pre-tip-off. You can get the play right now. WagerTalk.com, sports memo.
Hey, $9 too today. It's $9 Monday. You can get that play for $9.
Well, yeah, and you can get. I got a big ticket, 5%er for tomorrow night's game as well. With Toronto and Milwaukee, where I'm involved early in that one. But for tonight's game, I do think that there is a right side in this contest. I legitimately do. And if we look at it again, it's not always about value at this time of the year. It's about what team's going to win the freaking game. And you don't often, you look at last night where Toronto controls the first half against Milwaukee, and then by the end of the third quarter, it's a pick'em game, and and when it was through to the second overtime, a pick'em type game, that potential exists this evening. It really comes down to the character of this Blazers team. How well can they take a punch? In recent playoffs, they have not done well in that role.
All right, Teddy, I think we've said about as much as we could say about one game with one team on life support. We find out tonight if they remain on the ventilator or if the Golden State Warriors pull the plug on the Portland Trailblazers for the season. We'll see if they have a do not resuscitate order in place for the Portland Trailblazers tonight. We shall find out tonight. Total, any thoughts on the total here? And again, this goes again to you're trying to handicap what these teams are going to bring to the table. And then we do that in every game, Teddy, don't get me wrong. But if Golden State shows up with one of those lackadaisical games where they don't care because they're up 3-0, then, they're not playing defense and maybe, it becomes a little more of an up and down game. But again, if Portland's going to win this game, I always think Portland has a better shot in a lower scoring game, half court game than they do in trying to run with the Warriors. I don't think they can trade points. Even that game that they had all those 3-pointers, it still wasn't enough for Portland. Golden State has too many offensive weapons. You got to try to slow them down. And maybe they, with Iguodala out tonight, that's a different story. For Portland, they'll be able to move the ball better offensively and get some better looks. We'll see if that transpires. But the total sitting at 219. Opened up 218.5, and then Westgate actually opened it at 220.5, and now we found a common ground of 219.5. Do you see anything there?
Well, in the 2 games in this series that Golden State has won and covered, the Blazers have been held below 100 points both times. And I do think there is some correlation between Golden State and under. If the Warriors are going to win and cover tonight, it's going to be their defense that shuts down the Blazers once again, and Portland's lack of offensive acumen. Remember, Canner hasn't even been on the floor. He was on, 7 minutes the other night, and that's, Portland's all offense, no defense, a low post guy. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit more of him on the floor tonight, despite the fact that he is not eating between sunrise and sunset as he's fasting for Ramadan, which is an issue for Portland. When you're low post, I'm going to call him a stud, but your best low post offensive player has weak knees because he didn't eat all day. It's a factor. But when we talk about this total, I cashed an over ticket, a big ticket, 5%er in game 2 on the over. Didn't get involved in game 3. I'm not involved, at least pre-tip off, with the total here in game 4, in large part because I do think that there's a lot of questions as to the pace for this evening, and that's the defensive intensity for this evening. If the Warriors come out and they're hitting threes early, it's ball game over, and that correlation between Golden State and Portland, Golden State covering to the under, may not be there. If it's 58-35 with 6 minutes left in the second quarter, because the Warriors are splashing threes, that's a possibility tonight. So while I do feel there is some correlation, it's not enough of a correlation to get me to the window. I have not, as I said, made a wager yet on the total for tonight, and I'm frankly not very close.
Yeah, in Portland, they left a lot of points on the board from the foul line in Game 3. They were only 20 of 33 from the foul line, 60% for an NBA team shooting foul shots. That's just horrible. And so there were a lot of points they left off the board there as well. So we'll see what happens tonight. Teddy, always good to spend some time with you for Morning Joe and the Pro. We got to do this more often. I'm sure Prez will come up with another reason for a day off real soon. So I'm sure it won't be that long before me and you hook up again. See you probably Wednesday for videos. And again, anytime you want to hook up for sushi, as you know, I'm always looking for sushi dining mates here in Vegas because wife and most of the buddies, Ralph and Brian, none of those guys like sushi. So I'm usually flying solo when I go for sushi.
I could have sworn I just heard you ask me if I wanted to hook up. No, Marco, I don't want to hook up with you. Go get Tinder.
No, hook up for food, buddy.
Yeah, that's even worse. Yeah. I'll hook up with you, but I'm so broke I need to, give me some sushi. No. Cash pays, baby. Cash me outside.
All right, buddy. Hey, he is Teddy Covers. You can find him on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. You can find me at Marco in Vegas. This has been Morning Joe and the Pro. And unfortunately for everybody watching, the Prez will be back tomorrow in the driver's seat. Be well, everybody, and cash some tickets today. Thanks, Teddy. As always, I'm out.